Well, hey there, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. You are listening to Becoming the CEO of Your Life, the show that is all about helping busy women regain control of their lives and achieve peaceful productivity. So I am your host, Janeen, and I am a life coach. I'm a productivity expert, and I am a yoga teacher, and I am committed to empowering you to make the most of your time, all while finding balance and peace in your life. So today's episode of the podcast is going to be kind of fun for me because I actually had one of my current clients suggest that I do this episode. It's all about some of the phrases that I use as I'm coaching my clients. And she said, I would love to see an episode of the podcast, not only probably to help her, to remind her of some of the phrases for my current clients to listen to over and over again, but also for you so that you can start to have an idea of what coaching is and how it can even help you when you're trying to keep your head above water, when you're trying to do all the things for all the people. Because the default response for a lot of you is just to hustle harder, right? That's the cultural message. You can have it all. You can do it all even. You just have to work harder. So that is not my approach to productivity. My solution to helping my clients is kind of an inside out approach. Of course, as a productivity expert, I do help my clients with all of the tactical tips to help you to get your time back. But as a life coach and as a yoga teacher, I really focus on what your brain and your nervous system is doing as well. So there are specific thought patterns that you're currently thinking that are not serving you. Thoughts like, I'm so busy or I have so much to do. So you want to learn how to recognize these thoughts, and you want to see how these thoughts are not actually getting you the results that you hope. Sometimes we don't even realize this. We're not putting these two things together. And then as a coach, I help my clients to create more empowering thoughts for themselves so that they can turn their brain intentionally to creating a life that they want to live. So the mindset piece, I know that we kind of throw this out there, and a lot of you don't even know what that means when we talk about it. We're talking about, what is your brain doing? What are you actually thinking, and how are you feeling? Because your thoughts generate emotions, which drive actions, often subconsciously. And we have no idea how or why we feel stuck, or we keep doing the same things over and over again. And it's because of what your brain is doing. So I'm going to be discussing and elaborating on some of my favorite coaching phrases today, some of them, not all of them, that help my clients, and of course, you as my listener, to overcome some of the challenges that you're currently facing. So this episode today was suggested by one of my clients, like I mentioned, but she was at my yoga retreat, and it was just kind of fun because over and over again, certain phrases started to come up, and it was kind of something that we're like, oh, and here it is again, and here it is again. So these are some of the phrases that were routinely coming up that I was repeating to help my clients to get, like I said, in a more empowered space. So the first thought is, oh, this is the hard part. Okay, so we often resist hard. We don't want to do something because we tell ourselves it's hard. I was on a call with someone the other day, and I was asking her why she wasn't getting to some of the things that she wanted to do. She had a whole long list of goals that she wanted to accomplish in her life, including having a garden and writing several books and being more fit and losing weight and all these things. And I asked her, I was like, well, why aren't you getting to any of these things? And she's like, because it's hard. So I want you to hear me say this. You can totally do hard things. And I know that's such like a catchy phrase right now, but how do I know that you can do hard things? Because you do them all the time, actually. You're just not usually giving yourself credit for them because it's regular, right? But in these goals or the things that you want to accomplish, it's not regular yet. So usually in the early phases of a goal, we tell ourselves something's hard and it just stops us, right? Dead in our tracks, right? So I want to just give you an example of this, because this was actually something that I realized early on when I was building my business. In the early phases of my business, this was a huge stumbling block for me because all I wanted to do was coach. That's why I wanted to create the business, is so that I could coach women and help them. What I didn't want to do was build websites and learn marketing and do graphic design, because it's hard. Like the early stuff that I created did not look very good. Right? I wanted the business, and I knew the business would be hard. I didn't realize that this was going to be the hard part, the business side of the business, not the coaching side of the business. That part I felt really good about, but the business side of the business and running the business was not something I was really excited about. So when I embraced and surrendered and recognized, oh, this is the hard part, then it was actually much easier for me to get to work. I stopped resisting the hard part. So for you, recognizing the hard part can lead to, of course, your own personal growth and emotional resilience. So if there's something that you want that you don't currently have, I want you to stop telling yourself you're not doing it because it's hard. Because you're using that as an excuse to stay stuck unconsciously, of course. Of course, it's going to be hard. If it were easy, everyone would be able to do what it is that you want to do, right? So you have to remind yourself, number one, you can do hard things. And this is the hard part, so you can get to work. It's one of these things that we tell ourselves. It just kind of like settles the nervous system down. It's like, oh yeah, this is the hard part. And I want to just offer to you that whether you're going for the goal or not, your life is always going to be 50-50. It's just a different hard. So if you're not going for the goal and you're not losing the weight or you're not building the dream, whatever that is in your life, it's hard because you're not progressing in the way that you want to. And that is awful, right? But if you get going on the dream, there are going to be some harder parts to it, but at least you're moving forward and you're learning and you're growing. And that is the hard part. Okay. So it's going to be 50-50 either way. I just want to point that out. So now you can just recognize and be like, oh, this is the hard part and get to work. Okay. The second phrase is a phrase that I love to use sometimes when I'm coaching my clients. And I also use this in my own self-coaching is, how is that a problem? So one of my clients, for example, will tell me a story, and the facts of the story isn't the problem. They think that the facts are the problem, but the facts are actually never the problem. The problem is what they're making it mean. It's all of the subjectivity of the story, right? It's from their perspective. So in stories, there's often just a lot of opinion that's infused within the facts of the story. There might be 3 facts and 30 opinions about the story, right? So you want to get underneath the story to find out why something is actually bothering you. So one of the things that I will also ask is, what are you making that mean? It's the same kind of question as, how is that a problem? You'll usually find a thought in there that's not helpful. So let me give you an example of this. So I was recently coaching one of my clients who is a cancer survivor, and she has gone through therapy. And if you've ever had this experience, it's just a lot, right? And not only the sickness itself, but also all of the medications that you have to go through. And she had gone through chemotherapy. So she's noticed on the back end of the chemotherapy treatments and all that she's gone through that she just needs more sleep, which happens sometimes as we age, as things happen in our lives. We tend to make these shifts, right? Where maybe before it was easier for us to lose weight and now it's not. And before we only needed 8 hours of sleep and now we need 10, 11, or 12 hours of sleep, right? But she didn't want to sleep more. She was resisting her body's need for more sleep. So her current solution was to try to force herself up after the usual amount of sleep, the 8 hours that she was used to getting before she had cancer. And so I asked her, I'm like, why is this a problem for you to get up when your alarm clock goes off? And she says, well, I'm totally useless and non-functioning because she was still so tired. She just needed more sleep. So I asked her why sleeping longer was a problem. She didn't want to sleep longer. She was resisting her body's need for rest. She was resisting what her body was telling her was something that it needed. So there's all kinds of solutions for this problem. But as long as you are consistently resisting what is, you're never going to be able to create those solutions for yourself and get to the problem solving stage, because you're just like, I just don't want to sleep longer. Okay, so you're resisting what is. So when you get to that space where you're able to release the should conversation, I should be different than I am, I shouldn't need this much sleep. Now you're able to ask, okay, what really is the problem? I don't want to sleep longer. So now you can actually be a little bit more objective with the solutions that you're creating. So you can check with your doctor, right? Maybe there is something wrong that's creating this need for more sleep that they will be able to talk to you about. Maybe you need to work with the amount of time that you have and still get things done after you sleep for as long as you'd like to. That's another solution. Or you can actually get up after only 8 hours and work your mind around the fatigue that you're feeling because you didn't get as much rest as your body wanted, right? So now you're able to kind of see and say, okay, now what am I going to do? Which I'm going to bring up in just a second, but you're able to kind of reframe the challenge and the obstacles that can lead to more creative solutions. You can see what it is that you're really mad about. Not that your body needs more rest, but that you think it shouldn't. That's really the problem. It's not a problem that your body needs more rest. The problem is that you think that it shouldn't need more rest when it does. You're able to see things, like I said, from like, oh, I see how I'm creating this problem for myself. Okay, it's kind of boils down to some kind of story in your mind that your life should be different than it is. So when you can think differently about your problem, you can see your problem as opportunities for self-compassion and growth. And this is the thing that you need to work on in the moment because it's what you're up against. This is so funny for people because they're like, but this isn't the problem that I want to have. Well, welcome to being a human being. I don't think I have any of the problems that I thought I was going to have or wanted to have, actually. But we don't get to choose that. We don't get to choose how much sleep our bodies actually need. So the third phrase that I use often with my clients is, and it's okay. So we spend a lot of time, like I said, resisting our emotional experience, not just resisting what is, but also the emotional experience that comes along with it. This makes a difference when we're trying to get things done, because if we're unaware that we're doing this, we end up avoiding the thing that we'd like to do, or procrastinating, or even dabbling in it. Like we'll just kind of stick our toe in the goal that we're trying to reach, and then we bring our foot back. Right. So let me give you an example of how this plays out sometimes. So let's say the goal is to get to the gym. Okay. And you're not a gym person, but you want to go, but you don't want to go at the same time. You want to do it, but you don't. Okay. So you're worried you are going to do something that makes it obvious that you're new at the gym, where you're going to end up feeling dumb or embarrassed that you didn't use a piece of equipment right, or you tripped over your step, or whatever it is that you're concerned about. So let's just say that happens. This is one of the things that I do with my clients as well. I take them to the end of the road of their story, to their fear or their worry. So let's just say that happens. For most people, this prevents them from ever going back to the gym. Right. And this happens. This happens at the gym, not a ton, but it happens. Well, guess what? If that person continues to go to the gym, they figure things out because they watch other people and they're like, oh, that's how that's supposed to be done. Okay. Or sometimes, helpful people can step in and kind of guide them in using that piece of equipment. Right. But you want to think about, if you're concerned because you might feel embarrassed by something, because that really is what's blocking you, is the emotional experience you think you might have by doing the thing that you're worried about, right? So if you're thinking about the energetic vibration of being embarrassed, this is how we do this. We have to stop resisting being embarrassed. We have to get down into our bodies, out of our brains about being embarrassed, and you just have to get into the emotional experience of being embarrassed, because that really is the worst thing that can happen to you, right? I mean, you could drop a weight on your foot. That would be bad. But in this instance, if you're using a piece of equipment wrong, the thing that you're worried about is being embarrassed. So I want you to stop and start to explore what embarrassed feels like. And you have to relax your body to do this. So where do you feel embarrassed in your body? I kind of feel it in my stomach. I feel kind of like a little buzzing in my head. And you just want to take time to really explore, where does this emotion live? Does it shift as you're thinking about being embarrassed? Does it travel anywhere? Does it get more intense or less intense? Does the sensation of the emotion itself change? So after you've taken some time and exploring what it feels like to be embarrassed, I want you to just ask yourself, so what's so bad about being embarrassed? Being embarrassed, actually, and just sitting with the energetic vibration of being embarrassed isn't the worst thing. It's resisting being embarrassed, right? It's like we throw gasoline on an emotion that's uncomfortable and we resist it and it makes it worse. And then there's this whole long thing about it. So oftentimes I get my clients to this point of like, yeah, the worst thing that can happen to you is being embarrassed, and it's okay. It's not the end of the world. right? Is this going to really prevent you from actually taking the steps forward to achieving your goal? Right? You can do this with any goal. Let's say eating healthier is your goal, and you're worried that your kids are going to complain about the food that you're making. That's not the thing that's going to bother you. It's the emotional response. It's the indignation that you feel like, well, you should like my food. Let me just tell you, they're probably not liking everything that you're currently making either, right? And it's okay. They can eat things that they don't like sometimes. We all do that from time to time, right? Okay, so this one is a good one to follow up after how is that a problem? Because once you identify why and how you're resisting what is, you kind of settle into this point of like, yeah, and it's okay. It's actually not that big of a deal. I'm making it this massive deal, and we all do, because you're a human being and we're not very good at feeling emotions. So this gives us the opportunity to really practice self-compassion, and it promotes emotional well-being in the process. It's okay that I'm feeling whatever it is that I'm feeling, and I can move forward from that space. Okay, the last phrase that I'm going to share with you as far as things that I frequently tell my clients is, okay, so now what are we going to do? So often we get stuck repeating the same kind of victim mindset story over and over again, unknowingly, right? Something happened, you think it was unfair or unkind or unplanned, and it creates this story loop that you feel stuck in. Okay, you just tell the story to yourself over and over and over again. And this happened, and this happened, and then this happened. And it goes on and on and on, right? So in order to break this cycle, you want to stop, first of all, and really listen to the story. You want to intentionally listen. I don't want this like on repeat, like a broken record in your mind. I want you to listen to the story. And you listen from this place of curiosity and compassion. Like, tell me why that bothers you. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how you're feeling about that. What else happened? When you're able to really listen to the story from that place of intention, now you're able to soothe your nervous system, and you're able to get yourself out of that fight or flight response. You're able to move out of that sympathetic response that this experience has put you into because of the thought loop. Okay. And again, you want to ask, okay, so now what are we going to do? So if you ask too early, if you ask this question too early in the middle of the story, when this person hasn't, whether it's you or somebody else, when their nervous system hasn't been soothed and settled, you're still in this reactive space. You want to punch somebody's lights out. Okay, that's usually where you're at. So you want to tell the story until you start to just settle back into intention. And this happens oftentimes when we have an audience. Like if I am telling something to my husband, just the fact that he's listening to me helps me to start to regulate my nervous system again. So this switches that conversation from staying stuck to actually taking action and making decisions. So this helps you again to create more of an empowering plan so that you can move forward. So when you ask yourself, okay, so now what are we going to do? It puts you into that moving forward space. Okay, so I just want to summarize these 4 phrases for you one more time. Okay, so the first one that we covered today was, oh, this is the hard part. Okay, this helps you to settle your nerves. It acknowledges how you're feeling, like, yeah, this is hard, and now we can get to work. The second phrase that I shared with you was, okay, so how is that a problem? This question helps you to get underneath the story to figure out what you're making this mean. And do you like that version of the story? What else could be true? Like this kind of gets you into that space of looking at that story that you're telling yourself from a more objective space. The third phrase that I share with you today is, and it's okay. It's okay for you to feel whatever you're feeling when you're doing something new or at any time, really. So you might be embarrassed. You might be frustrated or disappointed. You might be afraid to put yourself out there, and it's okay. The fourth phrase is, so now what are we going to do? This one helps you to put your problem-solving hat on and move forward. I was spinning out in a story about 3 weeks ago that felt really big. I mean, it felt massive to me. And I just needed to process and process and process. And then one of my dear friends who I shared my experience with, she reached out and she said, so now what are you going to do? And I said, I need to eat breakfast and I need to create a plan. Like I was in that space of moving forward, even though I felt like my nervous system was still a little bit edgy, but I was able to access that intention because of that question. So one final word of encouragement, your words matter. The way that you speak to yourself matters, because that conversation that you have in your head generates emotions, which drive actions and get results. So you want to intentionally choose phrases that help you to feel more empowered in your journey to personal growth and positive change. So if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, I would love it if you shared it with a friend. And I want to remind you to subscribe and follow the podcast on whatever podcast platform that you listen to so you don't miss an episode. And if you are interested right now in joining me inside of my signature course, the Burnout Breakthrough, to help you to really implement all of the material that I teach on the podcast into your life in a very practical step-by-step format, I want to encourage you right now to join me. This is the perfect time of year because I am this year running a Black Friday sale that is still going on when this episode airs, and I don't want you to miss it. So if you are interested, go ahead and go to janeenalley.com/Black Friday, or you can ask me any questions over on Instagram. Just go ahead and direct message me at Janeen Alley Coaching, and I will answer all of your questions over there. So I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight into what it feels like to get coached, so that you can really see how your brain is oftentimes not very helpful, the things that it's trying to do when we're trying to get things done. All right, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. We'll talk to you guys soon. See ya. Bye.